India get the job done then in Ranchi. It felt like it would be a canter at 84 for no loss, but before you knew it, it was 120 for 5, and there were some serious nerves. But that's when Dhruv Jurel and Shubman Gill got together. They carried India over the line with a composed half-century stand. India winning by 5 wickets, and with that, making it a record-extending 17 Test series wins in a row at home. And also giving England their first Test series defeat since McCullum and Stokes took charge in 2022. Welcome to ESPN Cricket Inform Match Day. We're joined by Steve Harmison to look back on the fourth Test. Steve, before we get into dissecting all the bits and pieces of this game, just a word on how things finished. You saw England's young spinners against India's young batters battling it out with a Test series on the line. That was quite a sight.
It was brilliant. It was a fantastic Test match. It's been a brilliant series for that very reason. Young players getting their chance. Injuries from India's point of view. England have had a few players missing. Young players trying to forge their career. It doesn't get any better than that. And we talk about in the modern day that franchise cricket's going to win over and Test match cricket's going to die, and all the best players are going to go and play franchise cricket. Well, if that's the case, go and let them play. I'm not interested. Go and let them play, because if we're going to see young players get their chance and perform on the big stage the way they have done in this series, I'd much rather watch players that want to give everything for their country and try and be the best versions of themselves. And that's what we've seen in this last four Test matches. Young players betting the best versions of themselves. They've made mistakes, but they've also had some great times. I think this Test match has been a really, really good Test match on what was, I don't think it was the greatest pitch in the world, but sometimes they make for better cricket matches.
Yeah, and let's jump straight into some of those young players then, shall we? Tom Hartley and Shoaib Bashir, between them bowling 51 of the 61 overs in the fourth innings. And for India, it was Shubman Gill with 52 not out and Dhruv Jurel with 39 not out. Steve, it almost felt like it was going the way of Hyderabad, with India's batters panicking in a chase. This one much lower, of course, on paper, but then again, it can't be stressed enough that you haven't seen totals of even this level chased down in India in the last decade. So how much do you laud Gill and Jurel for the way they applied themselves and took India over the line?
Yeah, I think you have to applaud massively, because the surface was there for the bowlers to work pressure, because it wasn't an easy scoring ground. But when you do that, when it is like that, you have to be able to rotate strike, and I think that's what they did perfectly well. Shubman Gill and Jurel did brilliantly. Jurel from the first, he was player of the match, and he was the game changer for me. The first innings especially, but the second innings when he came in, 120 for 5, he seemed to calm Shubman Gill down, and you have career-defining moments. And I just wonder if this is for Shubman Gill coming to this series, bat number 3, averaging and in around 30. A lot of question marks on whether he is the right person to take India forward at number 3. And sometimes you have an innings-defining career moment, and I just wonder if this was this, because sometimes it's 100, it might be a double 100, but this is a 52, 140, what was it, 124 balls, or 124 balls he faced, but he got his team in a position to win the Test match, and he got them over the line. And that for me is that the Shubman Gill 50 will feel like 100, 150, because it's a winning pressurized situation to get his team over the line. I thought Bashir and Hartley bowled very, very well, but that Gill-Jurel rotation partnership, they went nearly 2.5 hours without hitting the boundary, but they still they alleviated pressure by making sure that one of them wasn't just dying in a hole like quite a few of the India batters did in the first innings.
Yeah, in fact, I even heard Gill on the broadcast after the game talking about how this is probably the first time in his life he's reached a half century without having hit a single 4. It took him up to his 120th ball when he finally went for that 1-6 down the ground. So well done to Shubman Gill. But those boundaries were flying thick and fast at the start of the run chase. When Rohit Sharma and Yashasvi Jaiswal were batting, India were flying at nearly 5 per over. How much credit do you give to the runs that were knocked off as early in the chase by those two, especially seeing how much India struggled to score after the first wicket fell?
Yeah, I think it was the key battle, wasn't it? We sat, we've been working on the radio broadcast of the commentary and talking about 192. The hole's got to be put in it by Jaiswal or Rohit Sharma. As from an England point of view, you're thinking if you get Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill out, and they're 20 for 2, England win comfortably because you don't believe that the rest can, put the pressurized situation in a place where they could get India into a winning position. So it had to be the top two who went out. But for me, that 8 overs at the end of the day's play really set the template. 40 runs to get India off to a flying start, and then they came out next morning, freshness of body, freshness of mind, and they really did put pressure on the England bowlers.
So let's get into that then. You look at this fourth innings scorecard and you see that there are only 3 overs of fast bowling, all by James Anderson. We didn't see Ollie Robinson bowl at all. Is that somewhere Ben Stokes and the English management erred? Would you have done it a little differently, especially after that phase where Gill and Jurel started to look comfortable against the spinners?
I think the spinners were always in the game, and I think they were always causing problems. There was a demon in there. There was one going to run along the floor like it did to Ben Stokes. So I can see why he kept going with the spin bowlers. They were the ones I think were going to take the wickets. The bit I struggled with was the night before, was when Anderson didn't take the new ball and bowl first up. Jimmy Anderson will never really concede many runs, and I think that was something. I think trying to create pressure on Rohit Sharma and Jaiswal to really put them under pressure from ball one and not let them get off to a good start like they have done a few times in this series. I think that's where England possibly missed a trick and didn't bowl Anderson. Bowled in 3 overs in the next morning or this morning. But we hear after the game that Jimmy Anderson had a quad issue. He was struggling a little bit from a body, so you can understand that Jimmy didn't bowl because he probably couldn't. He spent a bit of time off the field. Ollie Robinson was on the field, but we heard rumours and murmurings that Ollie Robinson was struggling with a back injury or back problem. And Ollie Robinson, I don't think we've got time in a broadcast for me to go off on one on Ollie Robinson, because this would be, if he wasn't fit to bowl, then this is the third time in not too distant past where in a big test match, in a big series, Ollie Robinson hasn't been in a position to fulfill 5 days of a test match. He's done it once away in Australia, once in England against Australia. And if it was that case, Ben Stokes said afterwards that he was fit to bowl, but he didn't look as though he was moving that well, then I think there'll be question marks on Ollie Robinson going forward. But I think all in all, look, you can say a lot of what ifs and a lot of maybes, but I just think give credit to India. I thought the way they went about that chase, especially when the pressure was on at 120 for 5. It doesn't matter if you bowl Anderson, you bowl Robinson, or you bowl the 3 spinners. I thought India batted well enough to win the game.
Right, so that's the finish of the game and how India got through with the chase. But let's get stuck into where the game slipped away from England, Harmy. And for the second test running, we have to look at the third day's play, which begins with England in a position of control, this time far more commanding a position going into day 3 than even the one they had in Rajkot. But then everything just fell apart. It was a perfect day for India, but how do you assess day 3 for England and how damaging it was to England's cause, both in the game and the series?
I really want to sit here and say England lost it at 177 for 7 when India were batting. I really want to say England lost it at that point, but I actually don't think England lost it. I thought India won it. If I'm brutally honest, I thought India won it. We can say whatever you want. I thought Kuldeep Yadav and Dhruv Jurel batted beautifully to just take that deficit down from 150 down to 140, down through to 120. Then there was a passage of play where England got a couple of wickets. The deficit got to 43, I think it was, or 40, 49 by the end of the end of the innings. India got themselves back into a position, and then you could say England died in a hole a little bit. 25 runs off 20 overs, and this Baz ball, all positivity. It was unbelievably difficult to bat on that surface against Ashwin Jadeja and Kuldeep Yadav. So for me, I'd love to say England, give it away, but I don't think they did. I think that would be so disrespectful to the way I thought India played. I'm proud of the way England have performed in these 4 Test match series, and there are times they have played some brainless cricket. But I actually think in this Test match, I think India wrestled the initiative with a good partnership between Kuldeep and Jurel. And then when you're, as a captain, you're a leader and you're wanting somebody to stand up, You throw the ball to R. Ashwin, and you say you need to do something special, and he did. He got 5 wickets. He got Duckett, Pope, and Root in a short space of time, and all of a sudden England are now back under pressure. And I think that was the phase of play where the game changed from England being in the ascendancy to all of a sudden India are now back in and probably favourites for the match.
Right. They lose the game, but this is a test match. England will savour for the one that truly unearthed Shoaib Bashir. Words don't do enough justice to both the workload and the results that Bashir has produced in this game. Harmy followed up that marathon first inning spell with by continuing to be the most probing English spinner in the chase as well. How satisfying a game is it for the young off spinner as well as for everyone involved in his rise up to the English test setup?
It's been brilliant to watch. It's been very... the pride of England supporters should be immense at this moment in time, and finding, a young man who is, I think, the difference in his body language between his first test match and his second test match has been truly amazing. He's only been with the team for 4 test matches. I think he bowled 200 overs before this in first class cricket. No forfers, never mind anything else in first class cricket. Takes his first 5 in first class cricket in a test match. To back that up again in the second innings and really give England a chance, I think England have unearthed a hugely talented proposition going forward. He's 20 years old. I think we have to marvel in the fact that we haven't got to build him up too much. I think he's on the right path with a leader who can really help young players be the best versions of themselves coming into an environment which is tough anyway. International test match cricket is extremely tough, but even more so as a spinner going to India. So the leadership of Stokes with Hartley, with Bashir, has been brilliant to watch. And I think for years to come going to India, I think Shoaib Bashir will be somebody that Indian fans will see a lot because of what he's done on this tour. He strikes me as a level-headed young man. He speaks very, very well. When we had him on an interview after day's play, this guy, I think, will stand with 2 feet firmly on the floor and will build himself better and better and better. And what a fantastic start he's had to his test match career. It was really, really impressive in his first test match. And I think he's gone to a new level in this one. And hopefully more to come for the young man for England fans.
Right, as England sit back and take stock of what is a first series loss under this regime, and it's been very nearly 2 years. So it goes to show how good a job they've been doing. If you are to look at the series from this point now, Harmy, and pick out 3 things that you think England should have done or could have done but didn't do right, what would those be?
I think they'll look back at possibly them 8 overs at the end of day 4 or end of day 3, and that will be something that they will likely say we'll take back. But knowing this group, it's hard to say pick 3 because they don't have regrets. They don't think about what happened before. It's always about what's happening next. But if there's 3 moments, I think they would all probably be in this test match. And that was seizing the moment when Kuldeep and Jurel were in. Could they have played any different against Ashwin, Jadeja and Kuldeep? I'm not so sure they could have. But that's one area they could have in this test match. And then I think that 8 overs, 40 runs, 8 overs, 192 to win. I think there are 3 moments in this test match. And you say pick 3 over the series. I think it's 3 over this test match, because in this test match, if they get any one of them right, England win this test match. It's 2-2, go to Dharmasar with everything on it. And I think that they're the 3 key areas. If you said England probably could have picked any one of them, pick them, do them differently, then I think this series might have been still alive. But unfortunately, like I said before, I think India won this game, not England losing it.
Right, we leave it at that. India won it more than England lost it. Will England end the series on a high? They began on a high, and they have. It must be noted, India lead 3-1, but England have managed to push India in a way we've hardly seen visiting teams do over the course of the last decade. So while it is on paper a dead rubber, there is still a lot to look forward to when the series concludes in Dharamsala. We look forward to your company then, Steve. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts over the course of this 4th test.